Welcome to Sorting Through Life with Colleen Waterston. I am your host, Colleen Waterston, and the owner and lead organizer at Space by Space Organizing, a Twin Cities-based home organizing business. And today, I am here with Alicia Aragon, my go-to trusty right hand for everything. And today we are going to shake things up. So I introduced us. I welcomed you like usual. But if you're watching on a video version of this, you can see that the chairs have
Tables have
turned.
turned.
Yes. And Alicia's in the host seat and I'm in the guest seat. And we had this idea to talk about to have Alicia ask me questions. And so we just went over them very briefly before this. And I'm very impressed with Alicia's hosting abilities. So let's hit it, Alicia. This is your show to run.
Perfect. All right. I'm super excited for these questions. So the first one is when you first started off, what was the time frame when you came up with the idea of potentially wanting to run your own business to the point of starting with your first client as Space by Space?
Okay, so I always say like my organizing origin story started at the Container Store and
Yep.
working there. But before it was, I had been working on, I did a big travel project. I went around the world and asked people the same three questions and was going to write a book about it. And I have a 100,000 word manuscript
Yeah.
to polish up. Um, and I was, working on that, and this was like 2017, 18. I traveled 2014, 15.
Okay.
Came home, moved back to Washington, D.C. 2016, worked on it extensively, came home 2017, moved to my parents' basement, like the, starving artist story, like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
Existential crisis every day. And then created an activity book for kids about cultures in Minnesota.
Mhm.
And then that was 2018, 19, pushing it. The
Mhm.
last thing I did for that in 2020 was go to the Minnesota Elementary School Principals Conference in February of 2020. And I was excited for that and going to run with it. And then in March 2020, COVID hit.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, teachers are learning how to do this over the internet. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just a weird time, but it was almost like this relief to say, I don't have anywhere to be because there's nowhere to be.
Yeah.
Um, and my parents had moved out of our house to downsize.
Mhm.
And so I was there to keep the order of the house, allow for them to have an easy transition. And
Yeah.
then this pandemic hits and I never left the house. And so I started to really enjoy kind of making sense of different rooms and different spaces and reorganizing and I had managed a renovation to move up to the primary bedroom. And so it
Mhm.
was like just after COVID hit or COVID was over, that was finished. And so I was delighting in
Yeah.
moving into my new room. And I would say, like, I was joking about not wanting to leave my house, and then it became government mandated. I mean, it was just a very bizarre time where I was like, this works for me.
Yeah.
I know I have a very aware understanding that the world is in a fragile place, and a lot of people are having a hard moment,
Mhm.
but there's not much I can do about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd turn on the TV. It was like, am I still supposed to stay home today? Yup. Okay. And then I just really enjoyed being in my home and
Mhm.
enjoyed, making sense of a house that was bigger than I really needed,
Yeah.
but gave me a lot of different directions and working through all the stuff that my parents had. So I started to sell my mom's tin collection on Facebook Marketplace in the middle of 2020.
Mhm.
But then I had a friend in my life who's like, you got to get out of your house.
Yeah.
Like, the world's kind of opening up. I get that you want to do these books, but you got to get out of your house just to get out of your head, and these books aren't coming to fruition. They'd come over and be like, how did writing go today? And I'm like, well, check out the laundry closet. And it was like, okay, well, when I left this morning, the laundry closet looked great. And now, in fact, it was, yeah, anyway. And it's like, I don't think you needed to change the laundry closet, but I was clearly very driven by bringing order to
Yeah.
spaces. And like, it was kind of like I would work on my creative projects, but I was just having so much fun Like, I love that,
sense
solving the
of your own
puzzle.
space.
Yeah, and, like, you can't finish a book in a day, but you can finish a closet,
Yeah.
so it's this very satisfying feeling. So 2020, this friend was like, "I think you gotta get out there." I'm
Mhm.
like, "Would it be weird if I got, a retail job?" Like, I'd done all these things that were supposed to be, so career driven
Yeah.
and, impressive for me at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and he was like, "No, I think that'd be did you just need to get out of your
Yeah.
house in your head. Like, you have to. You're losing your mind." um, and so I went to Container Store and I applied, and I mean, I put together like a presentation of all my before and afters of my house, like, and they were so needing help at the time
Mhm.
that they were like, "Yes, and which days do you want? We'll give you exactly the days that you want and the hours that you want," because they needed good people.
Yeah.
It was a hard time to get people.
Mhm.
Um, and so I worked at the Container Store from mid 2020 to early 2021. It was like a year
Mhm.
and a few months, and or I think 2022 is when I left. So, um, really love that, was at the register all the time and
Mhm.
asking people like, "What are you using this for?" And, really enjoying interacting with the customer and their
Yeah.
excitement for what they were going to transform.
Mhm.
But still feeling very much like I'm happy to just come to work and go home and come
Yeah.
to work and go home. And I loved the discount.
Oh, I
They
suppose,
gave
yeah.
employees a 40% discount. It was pre-inflation. So it was like, wow. I mean, the joke at the store was, ask Colleen. She owns everything in the store. And it was like, apart from a few lines, it wasn't untrue. And I couldn't afford to work there anymore. I was like, I've done everything I need to
Yeah.
in my world. Like, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And my friend was like, "Well, that's what you're motivated by." I'm like, I think so. That
Mhm.
discount was big for me, but being around the products and I remember the training of Container Store. I would wake up like dreaming. There was this one that I had a fight with one of my dad's friends, like a non-existent friend of my dad. Like, there wasn't he's not an actual person, but I fought over like which way we should organize something at the garage at the cabin. And I woke up and I was just like really heated,
Yeah.
because at the time they had this very extensive training, like 30 plus hours, and you'd watch all these videos. And it was an obsession, but that I felt was being directed in a healthy way. And
Mhm.
so um, after that, I kind of had felt like I was tired of doing the same thing
Yeah.
over and over. And just things were changing at the store. Some of my favorite managers were leaving. Like, it just was a different environment. Um, and so I left and I didn't want to start my own. I really didn't, but I wanted to try organizing in homes.
Yeah.
And so I emailed two of the people that came to the store often. And I was like, "I really like you."
Mhm.
They were the nicest ones. There was lots of organizers, but these were just always happy, always grateful, always patient people.
Yeah.
Um, and both of them wrote me back. One scooped me up right away.
Mhm.
We got together for coffee with her and her right hand, and the next week I was on the job.
Mhm.
I took over all the shopping. I was like immediately not only organizing 3 days a week and really enjoying being part of that team, but I would do all. She would go and do the consult. She'd show me what she needed. I can't imagine releasing that control, but I hope to one day get there. Um, and yeah, it was a really fun experience and ultimately kind of, you know, was time for me to move on. It was
Yeah.
very clear that I wanted to do things my own way.
Mhm.
Um, set the tone for things, but I learned by working for another organizer how to go in and out of someone's house in a day.
Okay.
So that was really like, I'm a talker,
Mhm.
as we know. And if I didn't have that experience
Mhm.
and watching someone who was very task oriented, she had a retail background. She was really good at like, this is the deadline. This is
Yeah.
we are going to start, we're going to finish. Um, I probably would have dragged on so long. It wouldn't have been successful for me because
Mhm.
I would have not known how to bring myself into that environment. The
Yeah.
home edit had also come out the week that I started at the Container Store. So
Okay.
that has a similar, pull everything out, sort it, put it
Yeah.
back together. So but I really learned like a methodology, and I
Mhm.
learned client communications, goal setting, but
Yeah.
I think that it almost set me up for a little bit of unrealistic expectations
Okay.
because we worked so fast and we were in and out in a day, never lingered. And if we went back to someone's house, it was usually like the next month.
Mhm.
It wasn't the same project days in a row,
Yeah.
which is more our style. So I think some of my early burnout came from trying to replicate that
Yeah.
model while then being able to insert myself.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was 2022. And in 20, I took on my first client in November of 2022.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then in January 1st, 2023, I was actually, my dad and I were going up to our cabin a couple hours away. And I brought my computer, I put on my hotspot in the car, and I signed up for my Secretary of State LLC. You go and you
Mhm.
register your business. And I was so excited about it, but I'm not good at driving and being on something. So I
Yeah.
actually got a little car sick. We had to pull over, and I was like, that's cute. Like, here I am starting my business and getting a little nauseous. Um, but it's okay. We work through things. And then it all fell into place, like
Mhm.
little by little from there. But so from January 1st, 2023 is like the official launch of
Mhm.
Space by Space organizing.
Yeah.
And I think you came on in April.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
shortly after that.
Yep.
So, what kind of support did you receive from friends and family, or what was the initial reaction from people when you told them that you wanted to start your own business doing home organizing?
Well, in between working for the other organizing company and then starting my own, I kind of was wrapping my head around the idea.
Yeah.
And so I was like setting up my garage, thinking, okay, this is where it's going to go. And without naming anybody,
Mhm.
there was like someone who kind of expressed some doubt in this, and I was just like, what else am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I'm mid 30s. I've tried a bunch of different things and this feels good for me and
Mhm.
I'm really excited about it. Like, why squash my excitement? But
Yeah.
I think this person in my life had seen me start and not finish things
Mm.
and put a lot into something and then not see it through. And so I think that their doubt and kind of, I don't support this
Mhm.
was like, don't put yourself in the position to do one more thing that you don't finish,
Yeah.
or that you don't see through. And after I got that, I actually called my dad and was like, I can't believe it. I was very emotional. And, he just said, use it as motivation. It's
Mhm.
like, I can't believe this person would say this thing. And he's like, use it as motivation
Yeah.
to do a good job. And I did. My first client before came from my aunt. So my aunt Barbara, who might be listening, she's an active listener. When we started this podcast, she'd call and she'd be like, I just think that you talked too long for 5 minutes and you asked the same thing. You talked for 10 minutes too long and asked the same thing 5 times. And I was really worried you weren't going to let them get to their point. But then you finally did. I was like, okay, thank you, Barbara. But I love that she's listening,
Yeah.
so supportive. And it was true. I was talking too long. But but Barbara, we get our support in different ways.
Yeah.
I never would have thought that Aunt Barbara was the one who would launch this for me. So
Yeah.
she had a friend who her daughter needed organizing help, and so for
Mhm.
Christmas she wanted to give her home organizing.
Yeah.
And so Barbara left a voicemail to me that said, so Colleen, my friend wants a home organizer for her daughter, and I told her I think that my niece does that, and I don't know. I don't know if I've never had her organize for me, but I know that she does that. And she said, she's independent, bossy, and opinionated. And the woman said, sounds like she'll get along great with my daughter. And I called Barbara. I'm like, that was your recommendation? And she's like, but it worked. And I'm like, and I love that because it kind of has set the tone that everything from this whole endeavor has been so authentic. And so,
Yeah.
like, I am independent, bossy, and opinionated.
I feel like that's what you want though in a home organizer.
Yeah, and kind.
Yes.
And there's other things that I am that, like, really help move things forward, but yeah, I'm all those other things too and more. And so, that was great because it turned into a client. It
Mhm.
was my first non-family thing that I was doing,
Yeah.
and then my sister-in-law, Tamara, I really have to give a huge shout out and gratitude for her because she had a huge Instagram following with a
Mhm.
lifestyle brand here in Minnesota, Champagne and Macaroons, and had been posting for years.
Mhm.
And I just would go over and help organize something.
Yeah.
Like, it was small. It'd be like a shoe closet, like the back pantry area. And then it would get bigger and bigger. I've done a lot for them over the years, or over especially that first couple of years.
Yeah.
But I started my Instagram the day that she wanted to post about it. And
Yeah.
she was like, "Oh, a post." She never posted like a post. It was just a story.
Mm-hmm.
And then a story would lead to somebody else reaching out,
Yeah.
and I did something. She's like, "This would be great for Mother's Day, like give
Mm-hmm.
the gift of this." And it was just this very like genuine gratitude for what I'd done for her that day.
Yeah.
And then people had trusted her and what she shares.
Mm-hmm.
And so and that was also a really unexpected supporter. So, Aunt Barbara and Tamara were like, I remember that first year of business at the end of 2023 just being like, thank you so much. I remember toasting to Tamara at Christmas and her
Mm-hmm.
mom was there. And it was just like, I wouldn't have gotten the traction, and then like one client that she would get me would lead to like two others,
Mm-hmm.
like I could relate back. This client turned into four more clients, like I did this one client that was a complete follower of Tamara. And then I did two of her colleagues and her best friend
Yeah.
because, it's like opportunity presents itself and people can open doors for you, but then you have to, prove yourself when you get inside the room or inside the home in this circumstance. But yeah, it was really cool to be able to say that turned into so much more,
Yeah.
and so um that was kind of what I needed was just that initial people I didn't know to
Mm-hmm.
take me into communities I didn't know. And also I do think that organizing for your friends and family is a different beast and not necessarily the best.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gave me the friends and family support,
Yeah.
but directly into other people's homes.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of what started. So the support um was definitely from unexpected, but really grateful for their encouragement. And it wasn't, also authentic because it was like such a thankfulness for helping make their home have more order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So one last question before we wrap it up for this segment. Um, how has your idea or plan changed for running Space by Space when you first started to now?
Whew, a little quick one before the break. Geez, I think I think that I did not realize we would do so many whole home transformations,
Okay.
but it quickly became I learned through our clients and through the way that projects would unfold that
Mm-hmm.
my brain is really good at whole home, at
Mm-hmm.
like systems thinking. So I do have an undergraduate degree in organizational psychology. And I do believe that, and with psychology, it's tough because, you really can't claim it until you have a master's or a PhD
Mm-hmm.
to be a practitioner. You can get a master's of social work and be a therapist. You can get, there's different things out there that I haven't even looked into. I've thought about getting a social work degree because we do so much of that kind of work, but I'm not going to get another degree. Um, but but it was like putting that systems thinking to
Mm-hmm.
work and in people's homes and then taking that independent bossy opinionated self and
Mm-hmm.
kind of say things and ask questions to really be an intervention in people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's grown into something. And then what we've been doing with legacy lifting and some of these connecting it to my family's business, which we won't, go into in this segment since I think we're at pretty much that time. But it's been neat because there was one week we had, and you
Mm-hmm.
probably remember it, where we had three different clients in one week in
Okay.
three different spaces, and we
Mm-hmm.
had to start and finish each one of them. And that's like the way that I would do it with the first person I worked for.
Mm-hmm.
I hated that week more than any other. I hated the pressure I felt that
Yeah.
I had to have everything in my car that was going to work for that person that day.
Mm-hmm.
I hated thinking, did we get it right? I can't adjust something. They're not able, like it just, and that many people's space that I needed to make sure, and then three invoices.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like that. Like
Mhm.
I liked the weeks that were like, okay, we'll see you tomorrow or we'll see you
Yeah.
Thursday or we're coming back next week. Like that weren't start and finish jobs in
Mhm.
one day. So that's the kind of thing where it's like when you're working, you kind of feel
Yeah.
what's good. What am I good at? And then I think when you are I can get pretty woo-woo, but like when you're in alignment with yourself and when you're doing what you're good at, the universe usually keeps attracting that to you,
Yeah.
because you're not pushing it. There's no resistance when you're in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been great because I think I'm delighted by where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't ever sit down and say, and this is where we're going.
Yeah.
I just said, I'm going to start a home organizing
Mm-hmm.
business. So great questions, Alicia.
Thank you.
I hope that people have enjoyed hearing some of this backstory, and we're going to take a quick break and come back for more. All right, welcome back to Sorting Through Life with Colleen Waterston and Alicia Narragon today, my right hand. So I am Colleen Waterston, owner and lead organizer at Space by Space Organizing. That's spacebyspaceorganizing.com. You can reach us at 612-747-1331 to discuss all your organizing needs. And today we are flipping the table, and Alicia's in the host seat, and she's asking me questions about Space by Space and about this whole organizing business journey.
Yeah. So, first one for this segment, what has so far been the easiest or most difficult thing that you've come across when running your own organizing business?
I would say a day that you're around is a lot easier.
Okay.
I did it by myself for a few months,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just find myself hitting the wall all the time.
Yeah.
I had done my esthetician's uh,
How we met.
space, and she posted on like TikTok or something, Snap,
Mm-hmm.
and your boyfriend saw it and was like, "Oh, Alicia was just saying she'd love to get paid to organize,"
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, I think it was maybe even a few days before I had gone through my entire bathroom and I was like, I just wish this was a job I could do and not have to do like your standard 9 to 5 job. And then all of a sudden she posted and I was like, oh my gosh, no way.
power of social media, like
Yes.
Tamara's Instagram and
Mm-hmm.
Julia's cabinets and Snapchat or whatever it was on. But then, she was great. She just gave me your info.
Mm-hmm.
She gave me her social media gals info. We used her for a while. And that was a great experience using that resource too.
Mm-hmm.
But she gave me your info and it was no pressure.
Yeah.
And I remember, being like, I think I do need help,
Yeah.
but it was weird to think of taking someone on and that I couldn't do it all myself,
Yeah.
right? We have this context that we can. And so I texted you like, hey, I got your info. Are you interested? Maybe we grabbed a coffee.
Mm-hmm.
We realized at that meeting, so you do spray tanning. We've
Yep.
talked about this before. Or I told Tiffany about this before, but you do spray tanning.
Mm-hmm.
And at the studio, I was like, I think I got a tan there before a wedding a couple years ago. And it was like, yup. And you had spray tanned me.
Yep.
You did not remember me, but I did not remember you either. But I was the one who was in a more vulnerable position. And I was just like, that's okay. But it was kind of a fun little coincidence. And then it was like, all right, well, I've got a big job right now. Do you want to come? We did like a trial day and then it was over
Mhm.
from there. So
Yeah.
I think you've been with me ever since 3 days a week, usually, sometimes 2 to 3 days a week. And then whenever you've got a little free time, coming in. And that was probably like the easier days are, many hands, lighter load.
Yeah.
I think having another person is like you think you have to do everything, but when
Mhm.
you have another person, you actually only have to do half of it. And
Yeah.
so you turn around and the thing that you had thought was yours to do is actually done.
Mhm.
And just like I feel that for when you're around or when anyone is around to help, but particularly, you've been there for most of it. I think that's what the clients get to feel
Mhm.
is that they think that this thing is theirs to do. And even when they hire it out, they still think it's, they have the
Job.
overwhelm attached to it. And then all of a sudden they turn around and it's done.
Mhm.
And it's just a really fun feeling.
Mhm.
So we get that too when
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I thought I had to do all the up downs, like we call
Yeah.
going up and down the stairs. And it's like, actually, Alicia did all the up downs. Or if I see that you seem a little, not in the up down mood, it's like, okay, well, you do this, I'll do the up downs.
Yeah.
It's like just to be able to be part of a team makes it a lot easier. Difficulty is starting your own business. Man,
Yeah.
I could do a whole episode on that, maybe 3, like, yeah, there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of like right now we're in a really big growth mode.
Yeah.
A couple years ago we took on the warehouse, and that felt like a big thing. This past year we took on more people, and that felt like a big thing. And people that weren't paying for their time by being at the client. So
Yeah.
now we need client time to help cover the costs of actually running business stuff. It's like, okay. And then took on this radio show. That's been a huge thing. Time,
So kind of just learning to be comfortable with the uncertainty almost.
ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yep. And like belief in self.
Yeah.
I've been telling people lately that, like, I told my dad's really my biggest business advisor. He, grew a family funeral business with his brother that my grandpa started, and just I never remember a day that he wasn't working hard and coming and going from working, and having someone call him at, it was a funeral business. So that's a 24-hour, 7 days, Christmas, every holiday, people still pass. Sometimes they even pass more around the holidays because they're waiting to say goodbye to people.
Yeah.
And then they release themselves from that weight. And so he's just kind of been my example, I would say. And I've been able to I always have talked to him for sound advice and guidance, but now actually having a business and, turning to him has been really, really fun. But I remember a couple years ago being like, I feel like I'm like on my track. Like I'm like, but it's like clunky, and like sometimes it gets off track, and you got like, I'm like imagining a train track, and it's like, oh, like, like leaving the train station, just, it's not, I'm on my track. I'm like, I wonder what it'll feel like to get to where you've been, where you're like really just your track, you're just moving and grooving and, chugga chew. And he was, he's just been such a steady, like, keep the course, and, excited when I get new clients, and that. But then lately I've been feeling like I'm really on my track.
Yeah.
And like, we don't have a whole fleet of trains yet, but I do feel like we're really building the station, and we are, putting the systems in place to be able to operate at a higher frequency and level of service and level of client experience. We have Laura, who manages all of the back end stuff. We've got Tiffany just crushing it when it comes to marketing and things. And we just brought on a new gal, and we're planning to bring on more. And it feels really exciting. But it's like I keep telling people, like, I feel like I just can't take my foot off the pedal of believing in myself.
Yeah.
Because going back to that doubt that I felt from, a loved one when I wanted to start this, it was like, well, Colleen, you start and not finish a lot of things, and I think just the nature of our job and what we do, we have to finish in people's homes. Like, we know that feeling where they're like, the skepticism.
Yep.
You're really going to get this done? Like, I don't know. How are you going to,
Yeah.
I will say that when you and I first started, we both, and you are a very supportive, great ideas, but you don't challenge me, which I love. And it's helpful, but you would never question my authority on a job, and you would never be like, do you really think that we should start that right now? But like, I think both of us have a little bit of ambition with time, or, like,
Oh,
we aren't.
absolutely. Little time blindness sometimes with what we can accomplish. I
Yeah.
feel like it's gotten a lot better though.
That's something that's gotten a ton better. I would say that was a weakness for sure in the beginning. And what I hated was, and truly hated, was the feeling that we would have leaving a house after we had just worked so hard all day, and yet we're apologizing because we didn't get something done.
Yeah.
And I think somewhere around year 1, it was like, we're not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to start that thing that we can't finish. We kind of talk about it better. I think because we've both felt that overwhelm at the end of the day, and neither of us feel good to leave things unfinished. And also, it's amazing how a person, like, we can walk into a very messy environment, and then we bring order, but maybe we leave a little mess, or suggest that we're going to be leaving a little corner of a mess to tend to tomorrow. it's like that stresses them out so much more than what we walked into. And I'm like, I've had
We'll
to
be back
kind of,
tomorrow.
yeah, I've had to like understand that and realize that we can't leave even if we walked into a very cluttered environment.
Mhm.
We cannot leave like remotely cluttered.
Yeah.
It's have you noticed that?
Yeah, a little bit.
So there's, things that we've learned just by experience. I think that we were excellent at what we did from the start.
Mhm.
And probably because of my training that I had, because of my product knowledge and all that. But I think that we've gotten so much better and just so much more confident and
Yeah.
comfortable and also aware we've finished so many
Mhm.
jobs and so many rooms and spaces um and been able to walk away. And there was this one day that you walked away from a job and we had helped this woman. It was Natalie, who's been on our show, whose dad
Mhm.
passed and she inherited his house, the house she was raised in. And um and and we'll end with this story
Okay.
because I loved it. I was so proud of you and I was so proud of us and I was
Mhm.
so proud of what we had to offer. Like, and I don't know if proud is the right feeling, but it just was just this whole.
I think gratifying. Like, for me, that was probably one of the most, like, gratifying jobs.
It was overwhelming.
Mhm.
Her dad's stuff was there. It would have been a hard job even if none of her stuff was there, but
Yeah.
all of her stuff was in the middle. His stuff was there. We worked so hard. We had 3 people. Um, I think it was like 15 days of labor. It was
If not more,
it
honestly.
was
We were
enormous.
there for a while.
It was a lot of days and she was incredibly open to us
Oh, yeah.
and it
Mhm.
was very like it was a really rewarding job.
Mhm.
I adore Natalie.
Yeah.
Um, just such a salt of the earth kind person um and you were leaving one day
Mhm.
and it would be the last day that you were leaving.
Yeah. Mhm.
And, I keep in touch with Natalie, but you weren't going to.
Mhm.
And she had, there were certain times within that job that you'd really crushed it on a meticulous thing, like the
Mhm.
little basement closet,
Oh,
utility
that
closet,
toolbox.
the toolbox, and she was just like, whoa. Oh, I have a video of her like, wow,
Yeah.
wow, wow, wow
Mhm.
at what you did. I was on the floor in the office. Sierra was like working in the office closet, and you
Mhm.
were like, okay, heading out for the day. And we probably had an hour left, but you had done what you were gonna do, and that was you had to head. Um, and she stopped, Natalie did, and this is just, like, who Natalie is and why
Yeah.
it was so rewarding too, because the appreciation that she felt was so heartfelt,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
she made you stop, like, and just say, "Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Like, you are awesome." And, I mean, I have goosebumps just
Mhm.
thinking of this moment. And you were like, "Yeah, happy we could help."
Mhm.
Like, it's been great, like,
Mhm.
"Good luck with this, like, so happy we could do this for you." And I just thought, "What a life I'm living,
Mhm.
where this is my business, this is my offering, this is my people, like, this
Mhm.
is the level of what I'm around," and, like, my life is just in a great place, like, emotionally and,
Yeah.
energetically because it's like what we're doing for people is so pure and good,
Mhm.
but that heartfelt gratitude for what you did, but then knowing, like, we get to go and do this again
Mhm.
and again and again, and maybe they aren't always that emotional and that
Mhm.
life-changing, but very frequently life-changing
Yeah. Mhm.
and very frequently rewarding, and I was able to internalize that and be like, this is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Like, this is my life.
Yeah.
This is my business. This is every day
Mhm.
for me. So I I think that's the biggest like positive from this whole thing. And that's what's
Mhm.
been the easiest through this whole thing. Sure, there's things of running a business that's hard and you find your resources. I think we totally passed over a question that you had about resources. Shout out to Elevate Hennepin. You're amazing. I'll talk about it another day. Um, but the I think that this episode probably really is about the heart behind what we do
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
more
Mhm.
than how we process payments.
Mhm.
It's like we get to serve people in vulnerable situations,
Yeah, I think that's why doing Natalie's house was one of my favorite jobs just because it was so, like, how authentic and how much you could feel that she actually, like, really, really appreciated how much we were doing for her. Like, yeah, a lot of clients are, like, very grateful that we're there, but she just showed it so much, and you could just feel it radiate off of her.
I'll share when I first went into that consult, her dog just barked at me for 20 minutes outside the house. Went to the bathroom in front. Like, clearly there was just a nervousness
Yeah.
that BG was reflecting from Natalie, to let someone in.
Yeah.
And Natalie would be okay with me saying this.
Mhm.
She's been on the show, and we don't talk about clients by names unless they've been on the show.
Yeah.
And self-identified. And she's talked about having us at her house to do some videos and talk further. But there was just like, I can't, there was such an overwhelm. And then, okay, so we talked outside for like 20 minutes, and then we go in, and it was a big job. And I don't know if like 2 or 3 years ago, Colleen would have taken it on, but
Yeah.
where I was at that time, I was like, I can do this, and I asked her, we opened up a drawer, and I said, like, do we agree that these spatulas are trash? And she was like, yes. I said, I can work for you. Because if I've gotten pushback from other people,
Yep.
Warren, who's been on the show, that wouldn't have been trash to Warren. Love him, but no, we have fought over trash.
Oh yeah.
And Natalie was like, yeah. So I was like, oh, you just don't have the capacity to do this.
Yeah.
You are so overwhelmed that you just don't even know where to start. It was like bed to chair, chair to bed, like such an overwhelm, grief, stuff, so much traumatic brain injury.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, if not me, who?
Yeah.
Like, what service is out there that does this? And even the other day, I was at a consult where they were like, for a legacy lifting client, and I was with, a 77-year-old and the 70-year-old sibling, and, like the siblings and the dynamic of that. And I was explaining how we're going to do it, the order that we'll do it in. And they were like, I didn't know a service like this existed. And I'm like, well, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, we're really creating something here, but it's a really cool service.
Yeah.
And that's when it's been the rewarding stuff to be like, this thing that you have no idea how to tackle, we're going to come in and tackle it.
Yeah.
And I have an idea how we're going to do it. And I'm going to bring a great team of people who will bring empathy and hard work in equal doses. And it's going to be the most rewarding experience. But for us, it's just as rewarding.
Yep.
Like, getting paid is the tiniest part about what is satisfying when we drive away. Okay, we need 5 episodes. Good thing we have a whole radio show. All right, Sorting Through Life with Colleen Waterston and Alicia Aragon. And we'll be right back to talk about a few more things. Welcome back to Sorting Through Life with Colleen Waterston here on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. And I am here today with Alicia Aragon. So Alicia and I work together at Space by Space Organizing, a home organizing business in the Twin Cities. To learn more about what we do, www.spacebyspaceorganizing.com. To reach out because you absolutely need us in your lives, 612-747-1331. And Alicia, if you're just tuning in, we have turned the tables on me, and Alicia is in the host chair and asking me questions today.
Kind of taking the reins a little today. So
you are doing a very good job.
Oh, thank you.
When you told me we prepped this, I asked you 2 days ago. I said, why don't we use our time this week? Do you want to interview me, or we'll get together? Why don't you interview me? And then we were going to talk about. I said, actually, just prepare the questions. And so then 10 minutes before we went on, you kind of told me what your plan was, and so I have a little idea. But I'm very impressed with you, Alicia. You always rise to the occasion, and just another, notch on the belt of what you've got to offer. So thank you.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but you know what I mean.
So you kind of mentioned this a little early in the show, how you spent 50 months traveling the world. So you went to different countries, experienced different lifestyles and ways of living. How do you think that you've incorporated that into organizing and running your own business, or just organizing people's homes in general?
I love that you actually came up with that question to ask me in these questions, because I think that it shows for somebody who's around me all the time that this has so much more depth to just making a pretty space. So my mom worked for Delta. She got that job when I was in undergrad.
Mhm.
And so my adult life, the biggest benefit that I have is the flight standby privileges,
Yeah.
to fly at a reduced rate if there's a seat on the plane. And I have spent an enormous amount of hours and days watching paying customers get on flights and wishing them well. I never wish for anything to go bad. I always sit there in the airport and think, I hope that someone's having so much fun that they're staying behind and a seat's open for me. I don't want like anything. Yeah, I don't want traffic for people. I don't
Yeah.
want delays for others, but I do want a seat for myself. But then there's many times I have flown in amazing seats to amazing places for very little money and very little planning.
Mhm.
And so I've been able to travel a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and then I studied. I studied abroad. I've studied abroad in China. I studied abroad in Argentina. I did a master's degree in international development. I did 10 weeks of um, a field program doing value chain analysis of non-timber forest products in Nepal. I've got a lot of unique experiences
Yeah.
behind me. And then in 2014-15, I went out to 40 countries over the course of 15 months,
Mhm.
6 separate travel times, and asked people the same 3 questions. And one of them was, what does a good life mean to you?
Mhm.
I also asked, what is the biggest threat to humanity, and what do you think the world will be like 50 years from now? But the good life question, I think, is what is the full circle with what we do today.
Yeah.
So I never I didn't complete the book at the timeline that I thought I would, but I do have, I do intend to, just to put it behind me, to
Yeah.
finish what I started. But I feel like that values based
Mhm.
question and pondering and how much time I spent thinking about what's important and what it means. Uh, I came home and created a good life for myself.
Mhm.
And then I try to do that for our clients.
Mhm.
But to your question, I think that being exposed to different cultures, uh, in the United States, where we love buying things. We have made it so easy to dispose of things.
Mhm.
I remember in Nepal, like we stayed at this hotel, and it's just like a room, and a lot of places that I've been in my life, like I've glimpsed into moments of discomfort, and everywhere I've traveled, I've always known comfort. I have comfort on the other side. I've never had like, I've always known I could get out of a situation, but I see
Mhm.
a lot of people in different situations for themselves and different housing experiences. But we're at this very basic hotel where you'd sleep in. I slept in like a little silk like case that you put inside of a sleeping bag so that I wouldn't
Mhm.
get whatever bed bugs were at this place, and like a mosquito netting over me, right? And you threw the trash away for yourself in the little trash bin, but then you'd leave the hotel and you'd watch them just throw the trash down the river. I mean, there's a lot of places in the world that don't have, waste management and
Yeah.
don't have recycling, let alone or trash or, anything. And so I think that, in the US, we definitely take for granted some of the things that systems that we have that keep things going.
Mhm.
But we also have just really accepted a very consumptive society where we
Yeah.
just like buy instead of, you know, save. In Argentina, I was on this tour and they're like, all those bricks next to people's houses, like those aren't just spare bricks. We don't have like the mortgage system the way that you guys do. We buy as we can. And so you buy the bricks, you buy the supplies, and then when you can afford the labor, you buy the labor, and then it becomes a wall, and there's just different elements that I've been exposed to.
Mhm.
Um, that could be a whole book. Maybe one day I should put some into that. And I think these different values that when you're around, I love travel because it gives you a unique perspective. I love getting on an airplane and the world that you come from becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller till you can't see it anymore, and then you are above it all. And then I love a sunset, or flying during a transition of the day.
Mhm.
I love when it's raining below and you fly above the clouds, and now you're above that. Like, I just love what travel does for perspective, what leaving your own environment. So then I think that when we go into people's homes, we get to bring our own new perspective. We bring a different perspective. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not stuck in that place. That's not my stuff.
Mhm.
That's not our stuff. I'm not I don't have an emotional attachment to it. I don't have frustration with it. But I definitely think, and it's something to explore more probably,
Mhm.
about how that exposure to all the different global cultures, and because everything could be like a 10-minute story that you learn from, that it's just like changes the way that you are.
Yeah.
And I wish travel for people, I wish it was as easy as it was for me to be able to jump on an airplane. So yeah, it definitely the good life, and wanting people to be able to get out of their own way,
Yeah.
and to be able to remove the barriers of them hosting their friends for dinner or taking a trip because they're so overwhelmed by the house that they're leaving behind, and being able to make it so that it's accessible for them to imagine leaving. But yeah, maybe another episode.
Okay. Well, our
Or I'll
final
finish my book.
there you go. Our final question for today. So, how do you think younger Colleen would react if you were to travel back in time and say, "Hey, a few years later down the road, you're going to own your own organizing business"?
I love that. I remember I have pictures of my childhood bedroom, and it was very chaotic. My mom, bless my mother, she let me be just me. And, sponge paint on the walls, 3 different colors. I remember wanting to paint every color, every wall a different color. She would have said yes. My room was my space. And I had Colleen's collection corner, and I still have my Milk Ad collection because it was just so well curated that I can't let that go. Rock collection, stamp collection, so many things. And I just remember being free to acquire those things and to value those things. But I remember a time when it was really, really messy, and I was sleeping on one half of my bed, and there was like a stack of clothes on the other. And my mom said, "I'm not buying you one more piece of clothing until you clean this
Yeah.
up." I was like, "Oh my goodness, she brings up a great point." So younger Colleen has grown a lot as far as, having more space for myself to flourish creatively. Um, but I think that, I remember graduating college and wanting to start an organizing business, but having no idea what that even meant.
Yeah.
And there was something very satisfying about actually starting this organizing business and thinking, I think I'm actually completing a life goal that I had a long time ago. And I will say, though, that all of my experiences, and especially with traveling, has given a perspective that I have a very spiritual relationship with timing.
Yeah.
And I do believe that all the experiences in between have made me better at what I do now. That if I would have found this sooner, it wouldn't have been what it is today.
Yeah.
And so what it is today is space by space organizing, legacy lifting, sorting through life, being
treasures.
so purged treasures are reselling. So, it's fun to be along for the ride, and I look forward to so much more with you at my side too. So thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time.